Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn. Alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we've got a fun NBA show for you guys. In the midst of all of the NFL playoff talk, we still got to find some time to talk basketball because this was a pretty fun week around the league. In particular, we had an incredible game on Wednesday between the Cavs and the Thunder, and we're a little bit removed from that now, so we're not going to go super in depth talking about that specific game, but I did want to use the opportunity that game presented to talk about some of the incredible seasons that a couple of players for these teams are having. Frankly, Logan, the theme of today's show is just we're talking about a lot of my darling favorite players. We're talking about my fucking guys, and my guys are hooping, and we're going to give them their credit today.
Your fucking guys?
We're talking about my fucking guys. I suppose you could interpret that as me saying that I'm fucking guys, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying these are the dudes who I believe in, and we're going to hype them up today. We got to start, Logan, with the one and only Evan Mobley, who was really phenomenal in that game against the Thunder and has been really phenomenal all year. But with Donovan Mitchell struggling, it was really he and Jarrett Allen who stepped up, dominated in the front court, and both had outstanding flat-out star performances. But this just got me thinking, Logan, how many bigs would you take over Evan Mobley in the entire NBA right now?
I got my list. Tell me if you disagree.
Okay.
All right, Nikola Jokic,
Stop.
Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't know if I'd actually have this guy above him. I just do this out of respect. Joel Embiid, again, just availability, like night to night, but I think just out of respect for what he is capable of.
Right. So I do want to clarify because I tweeted out my list and there were some people who were taking issue with like the Embiid. My tweet said better. My tweet didn't say who would I rather have, which then I think would involve availability.
Exactly.
This is just who do I think is better. Joel Embiid is clearly better than Evan Mobley. As much as I love Mobley, it's not close.
I would take Anthony Davis over Mobley,
Yep.
which I don't know how much. I mean, I think that could change. Maybe not this season, but next season, a couple years from now, I could see that changing. But then I've got Karl Anthony Towns and I've got Chet Holmgren. That's it. That's where my list stops.
I don't believe you mentioned Wemby.
Oh, I kind of just penciled Wemby in there. Wemby's just kind of a no-brainer. But, yeah, all those guys and then Wemby. But that's where I stop. I stop at 7 names.
Okay, so I think that most of those names are pretty clear, right? Jokic, Giannis, AD, Wemby, Embiid. Those are inarguable, I would say, if we're presuming health for these guys. Chet is a really tricky one. I do lean on the side that I would take Chet as well, but I can certainly see strong arguments for both sides. And by the way, these are both my guys. I loved both these guys as prospects. I've loved them so much as players now. By the way, both of these guys are more productive than the raw scoring numbers would indicate because per 36 minutes, Mobley is averaging 22.5 points, 10.5 boards, 3.5 assists, and 3 stocks per game on 65% true shooting. It's just Jarrett Allen and he both have a lot of minutes each game when they are out there on the floor as the lone big, so they've got a pretty good minute stagger. And then also the Cavs have just blown teams out so much that these guys haven't had to play crazy heavy minutes. And then Chet, per 36, is over 22 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 4.5 stocks per game. He also didn't have to play a ton of minutes early in the year, and then he got hurt, and it's a small sample size, so the fact that he only played a few minutes in that game brings down the raw numbers. I think that there's a really strong case to be made for Mobley, and it is that he is at this point a more versatile defender in his ability to not just be an elite rim protector, but also legitimately guard wings at a high level in a way that Chet can't. And really the basis of a lot of the advantages for Mobley is just strength, right? Mobley has added strength. He already had a stronger frame than Chet. They're both wiry, but there are levels to that. And so you see what Mobley is doing as a mismatch attacker against the Thunder, very small team. What he's doing in spots, even just going right at Hartenstein and going through him, he is still not an overly developed post scorer, but he is absolutely a more developed post scorer than Chet is, and he has the same advantage on the defensive end where guys just can't go through him. He can stay in front of a Jason Tatum, a Paolo Banchero, these big, powerful wings and forwards. He can move his feet with them, and then also they're not going to be able to go through him. And then I do think that Mobley is a better passer at this stage, and I do think that he is utilized very effectively in the Cavs offense, and they do make sure to tap into his passing, especially last couple games. I think he's got like 13 assists combined. The reason that I still go with Chet, I do think they're very, very close as defensive players. I will give Mobley the slight edge overall. And I do think, although they're both tier 1 rim protectors, Chet is even better there, in my opinion. He's even longer. He's got better timing. He's a better pure shot blocker. Insane to turn. I mean, people are shooting 19% below their typical field goal percentage at the rim when they were challenged by Chet this year. And offensively, I do think he has a significantly higher ceiling. Mobley does have that ability to physically impose himself more, and he's gotten more comfortable there and more aggressive there, which is great. But Chet's ball handling is on another level. Mobley's shooting has obviously progressed. Chet's shooting is on another level. His ability to do it fluidly off the dribble in transition, and then, of course, off the catch as a popper. It's just different. His confidence as a driver that we saw early this year, his aggression there is just different. Both these guys have been getting to the line at a better rate this year, which is a reflection of that increased aggression. But in Chet, I just see a guy who can go out there and who can score 25 points per game for you. And that's more down the line. I'm not saying that this year, but also he came out and was at people's throats early this year. And just the ability to self-create with him is on a different level. So that's why I do prefer him. But it's very close. It's very, very close between these two.
It is very close. I think it comes down to the strength aspect, and I wouldn't push back if somebody wanted Mobley either, because I think what he's doing offensively is some really special stuff now. I mean, he's taken a legitimate leap this season, and I really like his shot diet. I think that's one of my favorite things about Evan Mobley is that he doesn't force shots that are bad, right? Like you said, sometimes he might take a little post fade or something like that at the end of a shot clock, but for the most part, his entire shot diet is sitting in the dunker spot, waiting to get fed, where Cleveland feeds him a lot. He's at 73.5% inside the restricted area. And the big difference this year is he's confidently stepping into making and shooting threes. He's attempting nearly 3 threes a night. That's the highest mark of his career. Carson, right now, he's a 46% catch and shooter. With decent volume, that's 17th in the NBA right now. And as you mentioned, I think you're seeing him develop that playmaking feel and skill if it's either out of the short roll, if it's just within the flow of the offense. You know, I don't want to act like he's Luka or James Harden or something like that. It's pretty preliminary.
I don't think anybody was going to interpret that.
Thank you. It's pretty preliminary playmaking stuff, but it's a development for Mobley. You know, it's progression, and it's a step in the right direction. I think it's more interesting to look at the guys that he's concretely above that you would have maybe scoffed at last year.
Hold on. Well, there's another name that you had above him who I want to get into because I actually don't agree.
Who,
and by the way, I will just say the other big advantage that Chet has, it's not just specifically shooting exclusively from the perimeter, it's all around touch. I mean, last year, Chet, just because we have a bigger sample size, he was
so much
51%
more skilled than
in
Mobley.
the paint outside
it's
the
not
restricted
even close.
area. Mobley's 39% in the paint outside the restricted area. That's still a bad number. Mobley's 23% for mid-range. That is a big
one thing I do
difference.
like that Cleveland's utilizing, though, is like just giving him screens at the top of the key and letting him drive into an open lane, because I think it's really hard to stop a long guy like him, right? Like Chet can do more of that skilled stuff between the legs, dribbling, but if you give Mobley that lane with a head of steam, he's still really hard to stop. So I don't know. I mean, I think we've seen him grow basically in all areas of his offensive game this year.
100%. And both of them are weapons in transition. Mobley more as an actual grab-and-go guy. Chet more just as a trailer where he can just rain threes on you, or he can hit you with a show and go, and he can dust these slow-footed bigs off the bounce. And then they're also both weapons running inverted pick and roll. Mobley is doing a ton of that this year, but he's a 73rd percentile pick and roll creator. So as a roller, he's more aggressive, he's more comfortable. As a cutter, as a spot-up player, just like across the board, he has grown into a really, really good offensive player while being unquestionably a top 3 defensive player on the planet. And that is why I prefer him to Cat. Cat is an offensive monster. By the way, another one of my guys who is having a phenomenal season. Another guy who I have gone to bat for over and over again, as he has just gotten so much hate. A lot of unfair hate. He is having one of the maybe 10 best offensive seasons of anybody right now. The thing is, when you are building a team with Cat at the 5, there is still some inherent awkwardness. Are we going to play him at the 5, or are we going to play him at the 4, right? You are trying to figure out how to strike the balance of maximizing his offensive impact, which comes when he is at the 5 in a more spaced out environment, and you're seeing that this year, while also limiting the damage that he can do to you defensively, because he is a poor rim protector, because he is a poor defender in space. He's a poor drop defender. Like, Cat has a number of defensive limitations. Now, I think he's a good post defender. I think he's an elite defensive rebounder. And so he ends up being, to me, a below average defensive big. Not the atrocious one that some people have painted him out to be, but that's a problem if you're going to have a clearly below average defensive big at your anchor position. Mobley is kind of the exact opposite in terms of how much his versatility is an advantage, right? You play him alongside Jared Allen. He is thriving right now offensively at the 4. I think he's even better at the 5 and would be even better at the 5 full time, but he is killing it with his ability to operate from the perimeter, and defensively, he thrives there as well. But also, you put him out there as the 5, he is strong enough to handle that. He's good enough on the glass to handle that responsibility as your lone anchor. He does have even more space to work with offensively, and he's getting all of those big man touches to give him easy, efficient offense in the paint. And then, I mean, they have a defensive rating of, I think it's 101 point something with Mobley on the floor without Jared Allen. When he is out there with just solid perimeter personnel, they play like the best defense in the league. So I think unless you are a truly transformative offensive player as a big, right,
you don't
can
feel that
carry
way
an
about
offense.
Cat?
No, I don't think Cat can carry an offense. I mean, I think that Cat is amazing. I'm talking about unless you are the kind of guy.
I just think it's not Mobley's job. I don't know. It's hard to gauge. Your argument's good about the defensive point, but my thing is he does have Mitchell and Garland to rely on to help manufacture him offense, and like he doesn't, that's not his job, so to speak.
It's not his job. I mean, there's no question that there's a big old gap between these guys as offensive players, but what I was saying is unless you are a transformative offensive big, which means you are an actual
like
offensive engine, you can carry an offense. It doesn't have to be to a Jokic extent, but yeah, right, that's the idea. You probably have to have a pretty insane combination of scoring and playmaking. Cat's a good playmaking 5, but he doesn't quite have that. We've seen that he can't just lift the entire supporting cast around him to really good offensive results. Unless you can do that, the most valuable thing that you can be as a big is an elite defensive anchor, right? Because you can carry that side of the ball. You can make a defense top 5 year after year, and that's what I think Mobley is absolutely capable of. But then the difference is Mobley is also a really good offensive player. So if you give me just a purely incredibly skilled offensive guy like Cat versus a Rudy Gobert, I've consistently been on the side. Cat is the better player, right? Gobert can do so much for their defense, but his offensive limitations in a playoff setting are a problem. Cat is going to ball out offensively in these high leverage situations. I have faith in him to do that. But Mobley doesn't have that limitation offensively. Like, no, he's not a flat-out offensive star, but he's a really good, really versatile offensive player. Again, man, that production per 36, over 22, 10, and 3 on elite efficiency, while he is going to anchor an elite defense and can do it in so many different ways at the 4 or the 5, I'm taking that. I mean, that is just incredible all-NBA impact. It's nothing against Cat, who's also having an all-NBA caliber season, but there just isn't that limitation that Cat does have defensively. It is so easy to envision building an elite team with Evan Mobley as a big on your roster. Easier than it is with Cat for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good argument. I just think their roles are so different. It's kind of hard. Like, I could still see Mobley having a down series or something like that, where I don't really expect that with Cat. And I don't know, Cat's flourishing in the best offensive environment he's ever had, where his responsibility is to be that number 2. And I just think Cat's like a dream offensive number 2 in the situation they've got him in right now. That was the closest one for me, because I think I'd have Chet definitely over Mobley, and then Cat's probably my last guy on that. It is really close. It's just hard to gauge with their situations and their roles, and I just feel like more is expected of Cat offensively, and he's been consistently delivering.
Yeah, I mean, he's an amazing offensive player, but I don't think that he is at the transformative threshold that he would need to be at for me to prefer him over an elite two-way big like Mobley.
The Cavs are 8 points better with Mobley on the floor defensively. They have a 108.4 defensive rating, and Cat is a liability. So I understand the argument. But I do think it's interesting when you look at guys that would have concretely been ahead of Mobley coming into this season, like a Bam Adebayo, for example, right? Mobley not only is the way better offensive player. I mean, it's not even comparable now because of Bam's struggles, but he's a better defensive player, and I know you were making the argument in the offseason that he was the most versatile defender in basketball. I think I probably agree with that, with the value that he brings in terms of rim protection, how he can switch on to wings and stuff. No disrespect to Bam, but I think he's a better rim protector, and I think he can be
much better.
And I think he can be a better disruptor against those wings because of how long and strong he is. Like Rudy Gobert, right? Can transform you defensively, still a major liability offensively. And then it's like, I mean, the guy you were describing earlier was Domantas Sabonis, man. Can't defend, is a mediocre offensive big. That's not close.
Mediocre offensive? You got to chill on
he sucks. He's a bum. King should dump his ass. You can't build a winning team around Sabonis. You can't do it, man. It's impossible.
Okay, chill on him for a second. What I want to really emphasize with the gap between Mobley and Bam is I do think that Mobley is a better offensive player. Now, he's also in a better offensive situation than Bam has ever been in. And Bam is also a good passer, and Bam is a good athlete. But I do think that Mobley is showing you more offensive versatility right now, the floor spacing. He's the better offensive player. But he is also the better defensive player. And he is one of those top-tier bigs in terms of switchability. Now, Bam is still number one for me, right? He just moves his feet like no other center in basketball defensively. He is truly switchable to an insane degree, and it makes him so insanely valuable. Mobley is the closest thing to that, though, while also being a tier 1 rim protector, right? He holds opposing players 12% below their typical field goal percentage at the rim. Bam is allowing players to shoot several percentage points better than their average inside of 6 feet. Like, this is what I think often gets missed out on with Bam. He's an awesome defensive player. But when people have tried to argue over the years, he's the best defender in basketball because of his versatility, they're missing out on the fact that at the most valuable thing that any defensive player can do, that being rim protection, he is way, way, way below his peers. So he does a bunch of little things, right? He's a box-out monster. I mean, he works his ass off defensively night after night. But Mobley, to me, checks the two biggest boxes in totality better than Bam does.
I also think Bam is... Do you disagree? I think Bam's a bad offensive player.
I don't think Bam is a bad offensive player. I think Bam is having a very, very bad offensive season. A very bad offensive season. And continually, his shot diet becomes worse and worse. Mm-hmm. He continues to rely more and more on shots further away from the basket where he just isn't good. And Mobley is better, but Mobley also has a much better shot diet, which is a combination of situation and selection. But, like, Bam is a good passer. He is a skilled handler. He is, for his size, a skilled shot maker. He just needs to be doing way less of it. Like, I don't know. With what we've seen from him over the years, I can't say he's bad, but he has always been wildly inconsistent, very reliant on touch that is inconsistent, and right now just having a horrible offensive season.
And I get that he could never be spoon-fed looks the way that Mobley is, right, because of a Garland and a Mitchell, right? There's no guards to create those looks for him, too, but it's like, I mean, that's kind of just part of the Bam experience. He doesn't really – he struggles to put the ball in the basket. He can't be your – I think Bam's a number 3 or a number 4 offensively on a championship team. I don't think you can ask Bam to do anything more than that. Yeah. The two guys that were closest for me with the skill development and their profiles and archetypes were Triple J and Kristaps Porzingis to me, which I still do prefer Mobley. I think I don't know who do you prefer right now between Triple J and KP? I think I lean KP, but I don't know.
I do prefer KP. And KP versus Mobley is so hard. And by the way, I totally agree. These are the two guys after Cat who are right there. Like, these are the 4 guys, these 3 and Chet, who I think are so close to Mobley that I would fully hear a case for either side. The reason that I prefer KP is that, to me, he is still clearly a better offensive player than Triple J. And by the way, I've been so impressed by what Triple J has done offensively this season. And I think that his growth as a ball handler, his comfort, his touch shot making has just gotten so much better. KP, though, man, is just a walking absolute mismatch problem. Triple J is a walking mismatch too, but it's different with KP. This was a dude who averaged like 1.4 points per post-up last year. I think it was 1.3 actually, but it was the best in basketball. That is so ridiculously efficient when you can shoot over the top of everybody with such insane efficiency, when you draw fouls out of the post at a monstrous rate. And then I also do think that KP is the significantly more reliable stretch big. I think that he's the significantly better three-point shooter. So that, to me, outweighs the defensive edge that Triple J does have with his versatility, because KP is also an elite pure rim protector. He's just not a great rebounder. Neither is Triple J, but also Triple J is much better guarding in space. The limitation both these guys have is really their passing, but it's a bigger limitation for Triple J. I mean, Triple J is a bad passer. KP is more capable of just dissecting basic double teams, although he's still not good at it. But Mobley's more complete than both of these guys, right? I mean, Mobley checks every box defensively, and offensively, I don't know if I can say that I prefer him to Triple J, because Triple J is so good as a scorer. I mean, Triple J's per minute production as a scorer this year, dude, has just been insane. Per 36, he's averaging 28 points, and he's doing that on really good efficiency. 60% true shooting has come down a bit because his touch has come back to earth somewhat from just this otherworldly place that it was at. But he's definitely the better scorer. But Mobley is definitely the better passer. So they're very, very close there. And then I do prefer Mobley defensively. I think that he's honestly better than Triple J in every way defensively. He's more disciplined. He's a better rebounder. I think he's a better pure rim protector. I think he's better guarding in space, even though Triple J is also great in those areas. So I take Mobley there. KP is really hard for me because I think KP is a significantly better offensive player than Mobley. Like, that scoring is just so dependable, and it's such a problem for defenses to deal with when you have a dude who can space the floor and bully you out of the post like that. KP also has his limitations defensively, though. Again, guarding in space, not good. Rebounding, not as big of a deal, but he's not very good there. And so I think that Mobley's versatility gives him the slight edge for me. The defensive gap between him and KP just slightly outweighs the offensive gap. That one is so close, though, because I love KP. I really am high on KP.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the big point is, I mean, Evan Mobley probably sooner rather than later is going to be a top 5 to top 3 big in basketball, man. I think it's inevitable because I still think we're seeing what fully unlocked Mobley. I still think there's more to unlock with him,
Totally.
man. Like, it just feels like we're scratching the surface. Like, I think Mobley's going to be – I really trust his shot to come along. I think he's more confident in doing that. I think his handle's going to get better. I think he's going to be a better playmaker. And he's just got – Mobley's got excellent feel, too, dude, just positioning not only defensively but offensively. He knows where to be in the right spots. Again, man, I just think Mobley's going to continue to get better and better. And the same thing goes for Chet, dude. And
Oh, totally.
I'm so glad that they made the coaching change because you just got to tip your cap to Kenny Atkinson and how he is empowered. I liked Bickerstaff. I thought it was a mistake them letting him go, but Atkinson has really made changes for the better. And, you know, because that was the big knock with Bickerstaff is, and we couldn't really attribute Mobley individually to, you know, to that until we see it with Kenny Atkinson. But it was like, why is Mobley, you know, we saw it a little bit last year in the playoffs against Boston, but it was still like, why can't we see him fully put it together? And he really is. And like I said, man, I think Mobley's going to continue to get better and better. So I think top 5 is very reasonable for Mobley in maybe a year or two.
Ooh.
You think less? Do you think less?
That's not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Jokic, Giannis, AD, Wemby.
They're
not going anywhere.
It's when AD to me, and we're seeing it not like he's fallen off of a freaking cliff, but I think we're seeing the beginning of the end for AD.
I think it's another 2 years before Mobley is better than AD. I mean, AD stamped in that real superstar tier. Do you think Mobley's top 20 overall? I mean, it's probably tough to say. Wow, you think so?
I do.
I think he probably is too. I mean, I would have to dig into my exact top 20, but I think he sneaks in right at the back end. I mean, if you're clear of Cat and you're clear of KP, like those are two guys who I have right there, right there. And honestly, Cat might be in the top 20 too. I'd have to look, but I do think that Mobley is there. He's easily top 25. And I don't know if there's really any other bigs who deserve much of a mention here, honestly. I mean, I thought that Cat, KP, Chet, Triple J, those were the really interesting debates. Domas was the next dude who came to my mind. I know how you feel about that. Oh my God.
I did
hate him.
He's a bum. I did a rough draft of these guys a while back, and I think I had Mobley 17
overall.
Yeah, and granted, I had a little bit of a caveat with that. That was me putting Embiid and Kawhi below him because of availability concerns. Because then I think that's where this factors in. Who would I rather have? So I'd have to go back and play with this a little bit, but Man, I actually had Mobley over Chet and KP on this list.
Mm.
And I had him over Cat, so it's
And
close, but
so your mind is ever changing.
I do think he's a top 20 guy. My thoughts are fluid. They change every second.
Yeah. Sadly, in the eyes of Logan Camden, Mobley has actually regressed. Some would say he's
Yeah.
playing his best basketball. Mobley,
He's
Logan says no.
But I mean, I think you could make an argument when we're talking about overall impact for the Cavs. I think I would hear an argument for him as their most impactful player. I think he's still probably their second best player, but I mean, he's a transformative big on defense, and then he's really good offensively, man. You can't ask for much more.
You just really don't see that often. You really don't. I mean, most of the elite defensive bigs are not good offensive players. Not very good offensive
And he
players,
looks,
at least. Right?
not to be a head
Gobert.
ass or anything like that, too, but he looks more and more confident in doing these things, too,
Totally.
man. Like, he doesn't look like he's uncomfortable doing it. That's why
I
I'm
mean,
so confident
confidence
that
is
he's
a
going to
huge
get
part of
better.
it all, bro. Confidence is a huge part. Like, yes, he's added strength. Yes, he's added skill. Yes, he's clearly improved as a jump shooter. He also just is empowered to do more.
But
and that's
you remember
first
rookie
game of the
Mobley?
year.
He didn't trust himself to shoot threes. He didn't trust himself to put the rock on the
Rookie
floor.
Mobley, bro. Last year, Mobley.
Yeah.
Like, this is major growth, and we've been talking about it all year, but it's just really awesome to see. Let's continue the glaze, Logan. Let's talk about a guy who was on the other side of this battle, who couldn't come through with a win, but SGA had a pretty sensational shot-making performance in the second half, and he still got his in this game. He, to me, is the MVP frontrunner right now, as we've talked about. I want to take it even bigger picture than that, though. How many guard seasons do you think we've seen this century better than what SGA is doing right now?
I considered 7 guard seasons, and I could only settle on one that I thought was definitively better than SGA, and that was 2016 Steph Curry. Steph that year was the most efficient 30-point per game season since 2000. He let out the number one offense in basketball. And what SGA is doing right now is ridiculous. 31 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists on 63% true shooting. And what I think puts him over the top is the defensive element, the two-way element of SGA's case, because he's averaging 3.2 stocks per game, 2 steals, and 1.2 blocks. And so when you look at guys like I looked at a 2007 Steve Nash, for example, right? I go, it's the pinnacle of offense, right? I think SGA's two-way gap is massive there. 2019 James Harden, right? 36 points per game. There's an efficiency gap with the turnovers that Harden has, as well as the two-way gap with what you include with defense. 2020 Damian Lillard doing what only 7 players in basketball history have done. There's a two-way gap there. And so there's a lot of guys where I look, damn, man, SGA is just so much better as a defender. Also, I didn't mention this. SGA has the 10th most efficient 30-point per game season since 2000 as well. He's been super efficient. So the 4 seasons I really considered, shout out the 4 seasons.
Yeah, shout out. Friend of the show.
2016 Steph Curry I locked. I also considered 2009 Dwyane Wade, 35-8. 2024 Luka Doncic with what he was just doing as an offensive engine, 34-9-10. And then the other one I really considered was 2009 Chris Paul.
Can we go through these one by one? Because I have a lot of
Sure.
the same seasons down.
Sure.
And I think that there's so many interesting conversations to have. All right. So 2024 Luka. Let's start there. Why are you taking SGA?
I think I'm taking SGA because of the two-way gap, but honestly, man, I know we covered all the NBA season last year. I don't know if I really fully realized that's ridiculous.
That's unbelievable.
34-9-10 on 62% true shooting.
Yeah.
But it is the two-way edge, and that's what I'm going to give SGA. It's just that I feel like with some guys, it's honestly kind of the case that you were making about, about Cat earlier. You don't want to give those points back on the other end. It's why I argued about Anthony Edwards over Luka long term. You just can't give those points back. I feel like Luka, and again, maybe I'm scarred from the playoffs and the NBA Finals series, but that's what I'm going to lean on when I look at these two cases. But I did struggle. I think I'm going to go with SGA because of two-way value, though.
The distinction I would make is that SGA has been a top 2 offensive player in basketball this year, and he's obviously a significantly better defender. But that is important because when we're talking about guards, you can only have so much impact defensively. SGA is different, right? Because so much of his value is off ball. He does a lot as a low man.
You say that, but and I agree with that fundamentally. You can only have
Yeah.
so much defensive impact.
Yeah.
But I think you can also be so much of a detriment and a liability as a bad defensive guard.
Yeah. I just don't think Luka in general is that. Does he have his moments where he's that? Was he that in the NBA Finals last year, the biggest stage of his career? Yes. Over the course of a regular season, no. He's not an Isaiah Thomas, right, where he is the smallest, worst athlete on the floor you can just target over and over again. I'm talking, of course, about Celtics Isaiah Thomas here. I think Luka, when he's engaged, is a capable defender and then is a transcendent offensive engine. And I do think the most valuable thing that all of these guys who we're talking about can do is be a transformative offensive engine. Like, it just surpasses by so much the impact that they have defensively. But again, SGA is improving his team's offense by 15 points per 100 possessions. We've talked about the numbers with him on and J-Dub off, where their offense is dominant. It's like
And
a
Chet's been
122
hurt
offensive
for
rating.
How long?
Yeah, he's 22-4 without Chet this year, without his second best player. And you take SGA off the floor and this offense crumbles. He creates everything. The shot making around him is inconsistent. He just has an incredible ability to carve out a high-quality shot every time down the floor because he's truly one of the best scorers we've ever seen. He's averaging 31, 6, and 6 on plus 6% relative true shooting with over 3 stocks per game. So that is where I do think he has an edge. And him versus Luka is so tricky. I mean, we were just having this debate about who we would want to start a franchise with. I still had Luka above SGA. The thing with Luka is the ceiling to me is still higher. Because if you do get that capable defensive version of Luka, he is an even more transformative offensive player to me because the playmaking gap is big. I mean, he is an all-time playmaker and he is an elite scorer. I think SGA is a better scorer, but the playmaking gap is big. SGA is a good playmaker. He's not remotely close to Luka there. But SGA is more consistent. The floor is significantly higher with him. And the impact night after night is just something that you rarely see. And I think that's important to say. When we're talking about these seasons, I'm not necessarily saying SGA's peak is better than all these players. I'm saying if he keeps this up, this season is better because he's played every game and he's leading this team that is on pace to win 68 games. And all of these numbers are incredible. The on-off impact is incredible. The two-way impact is more pronounced than a lot of these other guys. So I would take SGA's season that he's having right now over 2024 Luka. You mentioned 2009 CP3. Over 2008 CP3?
I think so. I know that's the 08's when they went to the semifinals, correct, in the playoffs.
And that's his MVP runner-up year where
Yeah,
Kobe
I think
got it.
I think 2009 was better.
Okay.
I mean, individually, but that's his peak, right? Because, I mean, it's 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's one of those two. Okay, why are you taking SGA or are you taking SGA?
I think I'm taking SGA and hand up. I mean, I said this last show. I mean, I've just been wrong about Chris Paul, I think, periodically as we've gone through, like, the history. As I grow my knowledge base for historical basketball, I think Chris Paul is probably one of the guys I've been most wrong on in general. I think I should have had Chris,
bro.
I think I should have had Chris Paul in my top 25 players. I should have had him way higher on my point guards list. I got clouded by the ring chasing guys, the ring chasing cloud goblins.
You've seen the
man,
vision
they got
now.
me.
But that is the only thing dragging Chris Paul down. That and false narratives and unfortunate injury timing. He's the point guard, bro. He's the most perfect
He
point
really
guard
is.
we've ever seen.
And I think it's the fact that, well, one, I don't think Chris Paul could ever be the scorer that SGA is. And that's probably my chief argument between these two. CP's the better playmaker, for sure, right? I think they're comparable as like on-ball defenders and stuff. I still think SGA is more impactful with what he can do
Chris
as
Paul's
a low
a better
man and stuff
on-ball
like
defender.
that.
Definitely.
Yeah. But again, when you're looking at it in totality, I think that it's comparable. But it's the scoring edge, the fact that SGA can just serve buckets in a way that I don't know if Chris Paul was ever capable of because of his size limitations and rim pressure and stuff like that. It's close when you look at it in totality and what they mean to team offense. I think I just prefer SGA's scoring edge, and that's why I went with him over CP. But I think Luka and CP are probably the first two closest off that I would say that SGA is better than.
I take SGA over CP3 too. I have 2008 CP3 down here, but we're basically talking about the same player. And this was an incredible season, man. I mean, he gave you 21 and 12, 3 steals a night on plus 4% true shooting. He was just so athletic at this stage of his career, which really gave him a higher scoring ceiling. He was just so incredibly quick, and he improved this offense by 15 points per 100 possessions, and he got them to be a 56-win team. Like, it's a really incredible two-way season. I do think that CP3 is a little overrated defensively by some. Some of it just comes down to how impactful can a small guard be. He's one of the best defensive small guards ever, but, you know, the guy's 6 feet tall. SGA is the more impactful off-ball defender just with what he can do as a rim protector, but CP3 is the better on-ball defender, even though he has very limited versatility. But SGA is just more of an advantage creator, man. Both these guys can carry an offense, yes. SGA, with his ability at 6'6" to just pirouette into the paint and get wherever he wants at the rim, and if he can't get there, he shoots 54% from mid-range, and he has this dimension of being a legit volume, good three-point pull-up shooter right now. It's incredible. I'm taking SGA. It really does come down to the scoring gap. That's why I prefer him as an offensive engine.
Can I ask you something, man? I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm out of pocket for this. I really do think SGA is one of the greatest scoring guards like I've ever seen, and I think I prefer SGA to like a prime Harden in the like late 2010s even. And I think
As a
people
scorer,
yeah, I mean,
I
I think
agree.
people would disagree with that just because of the raw volume, right? Like Harden at his peak is averaging 36 points per game, but the way SGA does it and how it's within the flow of the game, and I don't ever feel like he's hogging the ball too much or forcing shots in the way Harden did. That's why I think because I think people would look at the raw production and go, "Oh, it's Harden, no brainer." You know, how are we or like a Kobe? I just think SGA is so much more efficient and so good at generating high quality looks than those guys. I think SGA is one of the greatest scoring guards of all time,
He
man.
is. So, in comparison to Harden, I do prefer him. The reason to me, though, is not so much about ball dominance, and it's not so much about like feeling like the guy's force shots sometimes, because sometimes I do feel like SGA is forcing shots. Now, he ends up making an incredibly high percentage of them just because he takes a lot more two-pointers, obviously, than Harden, who was putting up 12 threes a game, a lot of those being step backs. But it comes down to the fact that SGA's diet is so much more about two-pointers and that it is such an incredibly versatile shot diet, right? That he is the best guard in basketball in terms of getting to the rim and is an incredible finisher there with his length and his body control and his balance and his athleticism. And then he is the best mid-range shot maker in basketball, and he has a million different ways to get there and a million different counters, and he can do it out of isolation and pick and roll. I just think when you can dominate the painted area in the intermediate area with the sort of efficiency that SGA does, you are set. You are completely matchup proof. You are going to dominate the playoffs. And Harden was just always susceptible to more variance, and his three ball ran cold in a lot of big spots, and he didn't have that mid-range game to attack defenses in different ways. And he was a little more reliant on getting to the line because he wasn't as good of a pure shot maker, and that wasn't always as
And I
reliable
think
in the playoffs. So
SGA's
there's a
better
different volume
at,
and efficiency
I
there
think
for him.
SGA's better at drawing fouls than Harden in the way that he does it, you know?
He draws more legitimate fouls, I would say. I don't think he's a better foul drawer than James
Well,
Harden.
I mean, it's more consistent scaling to the playoffs because of the way Harden draws his fouls on jumpers and baiting. I feel like Shai's free throws are a lot more from contact under the rim.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but also like Harden just ate up free throws, bro. And Harden still ate up free throws in the playoffs. He just didn't eat them up as much as he did in the regular season. The whistles got a little bit tighter. So, regular season, I mean, Harden is one of the all-time great scorers, and he's an absolute isolation artist, and SGA is the closest thing that we have in terms of pure isolation brilliance. But yeah, when it comes to the playoffs, I prefer SGA. I prefer that versatility, and specifically, I prefer that's a dude who can make 54% of his shots consistently, right? You just never got that with James Harden. And there are settings in which that raw field goal percentage matters. It's not the best measure of efficiency, but you're in a grinded out spot. You're in a clutch spot. You're in a playoff game where the three ball is failing you. Like, he just has so many things that he can turn to. All right, what's the next season that you want to compare it to? SGA this year.
I mean, the only three other guys that I have written down here are I have Dame, Nash, and Wade, and I think Wade actually has the closest case.
I'm sorry, you don't have any Kobe season?
I mean, we could pick a Kobe season, but I think I prefer SGA's game.
Wow.
Um,
I think actually Kobe is probably the closest when
I
I'm
mean, it's
comparing
Kobe or
seasons.
it's Kobe or Wade probably.
Yeah, Wade, really great. Okay, let's talk about 2009 Dwyane Wade then. What's your take on that season versus SGA this year?
It's so I think they're so comparable in what they do, what they live on. And it's also hard because I think Dwayne Wade's team was just so bad that year, dude. You're looking at the starters that he's flanked by, and it's Michael Beasley and like Carlos Arroyo for a lot of the season, man. I mean, it's literally Dwayne Wade versus the world. This team got bounced in the first round against Boston in 5 games, but D Wade made them nearly 15 points per 100 possessions better. And
Well, I mean, Logan, this team also had won 15 games the year prior.
yeah, exactly. That's how they got the GOAT, Michael Beasley.
Yeah, it's a crazy group that he's dragging.
But you're getting a defensive and transition menace, man. One of the best transition scorers in basketball. D Wade's athleticism at this point in his career is unreal. You're getting a phenomenal off-ball cutter, an explosive guy getting to the rack, and a guy with an incredible mid-range game too, with elite touch and elegance scoring around the rim. Like honestly, if I had to pick somebody who is probably closest to what SGA is doing right now, I would point to this version of Dwayne Wade. Damn man, I don't know. I
This
think
is
I
a really
lean.
tough one.
I think I lean SGA because SGA's offensive situation also hasn't been great, and yet he is leading the number one offense in all of basketball right now.
Well, when he's on the court,
When
they
he's on
have
the
an
when he's on the
offensive rating
court,
that's
yeah.
equivalent to that, or not quite, but very close. I think they'd be like the number 2 offense in basketball.
I agonized over this one. I think I lean SGA this year though.
Again, this is a spot where we're not doing pure peak comparison. We're saying which season is better. And call me a cheeky little bastard. I think that in that conversation, even if you have a better supporting cast around you, if you're leading a team that is on pace to win 68 games still without your second best player, that factors into how great of a season it is to me. And that's kind of a tiebreaker because peak to peak, I think that these dudes are neck and neck. I think that SGA is clearly the better shot maker. That is the one distinction I will make. You gave D Wade elite mid-range, elite touch. I would say good, but what SGA is doing, right, where he's shooting well above 50% from mid-range, that's incomprehensible. D Wade would have been in the low 40s, hovering around 40% at this time. It was a very important counter for him to have, but D Wade is the better athlete. They're both incredibly effective attacking the rim, but I think that D Wade gets a slight edge there. D Wade is definitely the better playmaker, and I think that D Wade is the better defender. SGA is more efficient, though, and the reason he's more efficient is because of that incredible shot making that he has that D Wade never had on this level. But yeah, it's a ridiculous offensive floor raising job that D Wade did. His efficiency, although it wasn't elite, I mean, considering that offensive environment, plus 3% relative true shooting is really impressive. They're neck and neck. I'm going to say that SGA is having the better season. So now let's do Nash. I think Nash is another really, really hard one, actually. One of the toughest ones for me. You go with 07 Nash. I think any year, 05 through 07, basically interchangeable. He was so ridiculous.
I mean, dude, 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 12 assists on 53, 46, 90 splits, 65% true shooting.
Which is like 12 points above league average at this time.
Like if
He's
you
a
needed
guard.
if you needed great offense, that's what Steve Nash was going to produce. But it's a two-way gap. I mean, I don't know if Steve Nash was ever a positive defensively, if you could even give him that, man.
Oh, he was never close. No, he was never close.
A major liability. I just don't think SGA is the liability in the same way. So that's why I think Kobe and D Wade are probably the two. Kobe, D Wade, and Luka. Those are the 3 toughest ones that are below him, because I still think 2016 Steph, I will 100% give the nod over SGA.
Nash is just really fucking hard for me, man, because outside of 2016 Steph, we haven't seen a better offensive season from a guard than you have from Nash in 2005, 2006, and 2007. I'd probably take 2006 just because he was doing it without Amare, and improved that offense by 9 points per 100 possessions, which, by the way, is actually the weakest number for him in this little stretch. 2005, they're 16 points per 100 better with him. 2008, they're 14 points. Like, it's just absurd. He took a team that was winning in the 20s, and they had a star at point guard in Stephon Marbury. He joins the team. They win 62 games. They become the best offense in the league, one of the best offenses ever. He's the most efficient scorer in basketball as a guard, which doesn't happen. The only other guy to lead the league in true shooting percentage as a guard is Steph Curry. And then the next year, 2006, the one that I'm choosing, without Amare, they win 54 games. They're a top 2 offense. He leads the league with plus 12% relative true shooting while he's averaging 19 and 11. The guy had just mastered offense. He mastered pick and roll. He's absolutely the best pick and roll player that we've ever seen. He's one of easily the greatest pull-up shooters, both from mid-range and 3 that we've ever seen. His touch is absolute top tier, and he's a top 3 passer in NBA history, and he was also incredible in transition. So you are talking about like very nearly a tier 1 offensive player in NBA history, and this is, again, to me, the best offensive guard that we have seen this century other than Steph. So that is really, really compelling. But I will lean on the guy who's been a top 2 offensive player this year, only behind Nikola Jokic, the actual offensive GOAT, who was also a legitimately good defensive player, whereas Nash was a big liability there. And I do love having a guy who can be a takeover scorer with the sort of efficiency that SGA can be, although Nash is underrated as a scorer and was incredibly efficient and could have scaled up his volume and did scale up his volume at times in the playoffs and was just an absolute killer. Absolute killer, definitely the better offensive player, but SGA is so fucking good offensively that I'll take him as a 2-way player. I want to talk about Kobe now. I want to talk about Kobe, and I'm a little interested why you were initially lower on him in this conversation and where you end up shaking out on him versus SGA.
I think I'm taking SGA. The thing about Kobe during this time, too, is it's so hard because of his supporting cast. Like what I was just talking about with Dwyane Wade. I mean, it is Kobe versus the world with these teams.
Yeah.
And at his apex, still a phenomenal athlete, amazing defensive playmaker. And we're talking about trailing, blocking shots, on ball. The reason I lean on SGA, that's what it's so hard. I wish we could see some of these guards in the modern league with all of this spacing, man. Like, I wish we could have seen Allen Iverson in the modern NBA with all this spacing. I wish we could have seen Kobe with all this space to work and all this shooting, because I don't know. I don't know how differently these guys look if, in this current basketball landscape, because these guys are playing in the dredges, the grime of 2 big looks with 2 big-ass dudes on the low block who are unskilled and clogging up all of the interior of the arc. The reason I lean on SGA is I feel like SGA is better at creating space on those difficult shots. And I just feel like his diet is... I like his shot diet more. I think that... And again, I don't know if that's just a byproduct of the era or if it's just that SGA is that much better, but I just like the looks that SGA works to more than the looks that Kobe would routinely work to, where it's a contested, and don't get me wrong, a lot of these shots are contested, and these are 2 all-time difficult shot makers. I don't want to undersell that aspect of it, but I just prefer the space that SGA creates on those looks, and to me, it's more replicable and reliable, and marginally, I think SGA is probably the better defender.
Well, it depends on which version of Kobe you're choosing, and that's kind of what's interesting.
Are you
here.
going early Kobe?
I'm going to go with 2006 Kobe, just because I think that was unequivocally the best he's ever been offensively, but that version of Kobe does take a real step back defensively, and I would say that SGA is clearly having a better defensive season than Kobe did in 2006, but also part of that is not just that he wasn't at his absolute athletic peak that you get in the early 2000s, and also just that his defensive motor was significantly higher when he was younger at that stage. I mean, we're still just talking about 27-year-old Kobe here, but another big difference for his defense is like his offensive load was just so absurd. He couldn't really exert himself defensively. So maybe part of this is situational privilege, but if we're talking about the season, I do think that that is an advantage for SGA. But this is such an unbelievable offensive carry job, dude. I mean, Kobe discourse is always tricky, but I also feel like there's so much nuance that gets missed out on where people are either in the camp that Kobe is one of the 3 greatest players of all time, or they're in the camp that Kobe is wildly overrated. He was a shot chucker. He was inefficient. And it's just not true. Neither side to me is even close to the truth. Raw scoring efficiency numbers don't measure the total impact that Kobe had on offense, but also the fact that he couldn't just manufacture super easy shots like some of these other all-time great players, like LeBron can at the rim, like Steph can with a pull-up 3, right? That also does matter. Life was harder for him compared to some of these other guys, but he's also drawing so much defensive attention at all times. He is such a ridiculously good, tough shot maker, and he is probably an underrated playmaker overall, that he can totally transform an offense. This year, Logan, 2006, the Lakers were 19 points per 100 possessions better with him offensively. That is a peak Steph number. That is a peak Jokic number. You do not see numbers like that. And this supporting cast is an actual joke. And they were a 92nd percentile offense with him on the floor, as he's averaging over 35 points per game on plus 2.3% relative true shooting. Yeah, that's not sparkling efficiency. He's scoring over 35 points per game, man. With the bum squad around him, with Smush Parker and Kwame and Chris Mim and Brian Cook. Like, these are the dudes who are starting for this team. I still think I'm going to give SGA the edge for the two-way stuff and the efficiency as a scorer and being a slightly better playmaker, in my opinion. But what Kobe was able to do with his volume here, the impact goes so much beyond just looking at his raw scoring efficiency and saying, oh, it wasn't that impressive. Like, this is an insane season, and I am barely taking this SGA season. Also important, Kobe, way better off-ball player than SGA. Way better off-ball player. So when we're talking about
I think D-Wade too.
Yeah, D-Wade really reached his off-ball peak once he started playing with LeBron. I mean, 2011, I think, is when you get that version of D-Wade who's awesome as a cutter. Kobe was always a really good off-ball player. So that's important. I think I slightly prefer Kobe offensively. I think this comes down to the fact that Kobe defensively was just not good at all in 2006, and SGA has been good. Okay. Any other seasons that you really think are close here? No?
Those were all the ones I had written down.
The only other one that I had written down, who you touched on briefly in your opening thing, was James Harden. Because we're really comparing regular seasons here, right? SGA hasn't played in the postseason yet, and Harden has some unbelievable regular seasons. And I think 2018 is his best regular season. I think is when he peaked as a player. He was significantly better in the playoffs that year than he was in 2018 and some of the seasons before then. He was 30 points, 9 assists a night on plus 6% relative true shooting, led the number 1 offense this year, and his offensive on-off splits aren't insane. Like, the offense was 6 points per 100 better with him, but they had Chris Paul in the minutes with him off. And the supporting cast outside of him and Chris Paul, we know, was basically just spot-up shooters. It was not impressive. And Harden at this stage in his career was basically an automatic top 2 offense in the regular season. He's the better offensive player. I don't think there's argument, because even though you and I can say we prefer Shai as scorers, that's really a playoff thing, and there's also no debate that Harden is the significantly better playmaker. I'm going to take SGA because I think the defensive gap surpasses that. And also, Harden and Luka have a lot of similarities, right, in terms of their like broad strengths and limitations, bad defensive players who could be okay when they were engaged, but that was always going to be a question. Very ball-dominant offensive players, super high-volume scorers and playmakers. The difference for me with Luka is that I've always preferred his versatility as a shot maker, and that's why I prefer him to Harden, which is more of a playoff thing again. But if I'm taking SGA over Luka, if I'm taking this season of SGA over any other season of Luka that we've seen so far, then I'm taking this version of SGA over any season of Harden that we've seen so far. I will say some people will probably ask about like D Rose. Frankly, I don't think it's close. D Rose was a very good offensive floor racer in 2011. It's just totally different what SGA is as a
actually
shooter,
the other
defensive player.
I don't even feel like we have to delve into it. I feel like the other one would be Russ.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was also thinking about AI when you mentioned him. Russ, I mean, you look at 2017, it's a really, really good floor raising season, man. The gap in efficiency between these two guys could not be bigger. The defensive gap is sizable. SGA is so much better at taking care of the basketball, which is another big advantage that he has over a Harden, over a Luka, over several of these really ball-dominant, heliocentric guys who are averaging 4 or 5 turnovers a night. SGA is going to give you just over 2 turnovers a night, which is crazy for how much he has the ball in his hands and the volume that he has offensively. That to me is very clear. I have so much more faith in SGA to be an efficient offensive engine, and he's a better two-way player. And AI, everybody loves AI, man. Absolute marvel to watch. People are going to get pissed at this. It's hard to find anything that AI was actually better at than SGA. SGA was the better rim finisher. SGA is the better foul drawer, I would say. They both eat up free throws. SGA is the significantly better jump shooter from both mid-range and beyond the arc. SGA, they're comparable as playmakers. Neither of them are great there. I think I would still give SGA the slight edge. And then he's way better defensively. It's just hard when one dude is 6'6" and he can do all these things at an incredible level. And he's this sort of one-of-one change in pace, nimble mover who's also a crazy gifted shot maker with a deep-ass bag compared to an incredibly quick, incredibly forceful player on every basketball game, AI. Who the ability he had to get to the rim at his size was incredible, but like we're talking about a dude who's 6 foot on a good day. It's just different. It's so much easier. Basketball is a game of size, man, and unless you are able to manufacture a super efficient shot diet without having those physical advantages, like Steph Curry, is like the one guy who comes to mind.
Steph's 6'3".
Still bigger, but obviously he doesn't have the physical advantages of these other guys. It's just really, really hard to be as impactful, and I don't think that AI and SGA are close at all, honestly. That's no hate on AI.
I agree. I mean, there's
SGA
a growing...
a lot better.
There's a growing contingency of people I've noticed that are, realizing the inefficiencies, and that team was built on defense. That being said, still, that team that went to the NBA Finals, they couldn't have done it without a guy like Allen Iverson at the helm. Again, man, basketball is just so different. That's why I'm so thankful that I am getting to watch, in my prime viewing, I'm in my prime right now watching basketball.
Yeah, you are.
I just feel blessed to be able to watch all the skill that we have. Because you go back and you watch those games, and it is disgusting. It is grimy. It is nasty. There's so little skill on the floor. And, again, that's why I always like to push back when people make those things about Kobe and Allen Iverson. Yes, they are inefficient. It was hard to be efficient back then.
Definitely. The one thing that I will point out is SGA has not been put in a great offensive situation when Chet isn't on the floor, right? I really like Hartenstein. I think he's a good complement to him out of the pick and roll. I think he does a lot of good stuff offensively, but he's a non-floor spacing big, and you're going to have probably several questionable shooters on the floor at all times, and SGA can still lead you to elite offense. AI was a good floor raiser. I mean, that's what he did. He was tough to fit alongside other guys, but he could get you to be that sort of average offense. But that's really where it capped out. 2001, he got them to be an average offense. I think SGA, in a situation where the offensive skill around him is better, but also the offensive skill around the league is so much better. But like, he makes them a flat-out elite offense when he's on the floor. And it's in a similar philosophy of, we're prioritizing defensive personnel, we're putting the ball in your hands, we're putting the burden on you, and the results are just a lot better. I feel like that pretty much covers it. I think that but point is, holy shit, man, SGA is going up against some of the great guard names that we've seen, and we're saying he's having a better season than a whole lot of them, and I think his peak is very, very comparable to a whole lot of them and surpasses, honestly, all but maybe a few. And we're going to do our midseason awards soon. We're coming up on that, but like, I just want to reiterate, this is a strong MVP season that SGA is having, okay? I understand what Jokic is doing individually. It would be unprecedented, completely unprecedented, for a player to have this sort of individual volume, efficiency, two-way impact, and team success and not be MVP. What SGA is doing is absolutely ridiculous.
I'm moved legitimately.
You gotta be fucking moved, dude. I'm moved to tears every time I watch him play. He's my favorite scorer to watch maybe ever, dude. He's an artist, and I'm in love with him. NFL playoffs? We're talking about NFL playoffs? You bet we are. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Scoring touchdowns is key to winning in the NFL playoffs, and the key to you scoring big is betting on them at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet touchdowns.
Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. And here's another reason to watch your favorite players crush it in the playoffs. New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly.
Score big during the NFL playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Logan, it may just be my lucky day because I just said I'm in love with SGA, and I am. I am deeply, madly, hopelessly in love with Evan Mobley. And you know who else I'm in love with, Logan? Amen Thompson, who has been doing his thing as of late. True or false, Logan? Out of the last 2 draft classes, outside of Wembanyama, Amen Thompson will be the best player.
True. I'm going to just have to get you a shirt, Carson, that just says, like, you're right across the top.
Glazed, but I appreciate it.
Amen is ridiculous, dude. Amen is insane. He's one of the best athletes I've ever seen. Like, pick a sport, pick a athlete. Amen is a freak, dude. And that's why, I know you did that video on him way back. Literally, if Amen can figure out the shot and just be like a 30 to 35% shooter, he has no holes in his game. I think you're looking at a guy that could be one of the best transition scorers in all of basketball. He is a transition menace. On defense, he is a havoc wreaker in all facets, on inbound passes, off of a rebound, sneaking up behind guys and poking balls loose. As an on-ball defender, as an off-ball defender, he's a great rebounder. He's a good off-ball cutter. He's a smart passer and playmaker, and he has tremendous basketball instincts and feel. And so when you take all of the IQ in positional and the instincts, and you put that in a one-of-one athlete, which ironically he's a one-of-two athlete, him and Asar.
But he's a little better.
He is a little better. Yeah. Or at least I have the most confidence in Amen figuring it out because he has such a high baseline. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like no matter, like he just can't fail. And that's why I'm so confident in him being great. If he can figure out his one flaw, the jump shot, he's going to be one of the best players on the planet. And even if he doesn't reach that, right? Even if Amen doesn't become a #1, he's like he's a winner. He is a dream wing in a lab as a #3 or a #2. He's just going to win you basketball games. And to me, he is the crown jewel in Houston, right? You can like Jalen Green. You can like Jabari Smith Jr. You can like Reed Shepherd. You can like Alperin. Damn, the Rockets have some guys.
I was going to say, you got to start with Şengün in this.
Amen is the guy to me. And I look at the competition. I think Alex Sarr has a good chance at being potentially one of the best guys from these last couple of drafts, just because of what he can do defensively. And if he can become, passable offensively, you're looking at a really good player. Donovan Clingan, I think, with the defensive floor that he brings you. Stephon Castle, I think, is going to be a stud. I think Brandon Miller is going to be great. But if you ask me to pick out of the bunch, it would be Amen Thompson because, again, his baseline is so high of being an impactful, winning basketball player. The only hole he has in his game is that jump shot, and yet, despite not being an effective jump shooter, you're seeing him be an effective offensive player, again, with backdoor cuts, with playmaking and passing, and doing everything else outside of jump shooting. Amen's going to be a monster, and I don't know, man, I feel foolish for where I had him and Asar in my I had a big chasm between them. I was high on Amen. I should have been higher. Amen's going to be a monster.
But you were a lot higher on Amen than Asar, I thought.
I was. Amen was I think Amen was 3 for me or something in the draft. But I think Amen should have been 2.
I mean, what I said at the time, dude, is in a lot of drafts, Amen is your number one prospect. It was just so crazy because it wasn't just Wemby. I mean, I thought Scoot was a great prospect. Brandon Miller was my number 2 guy. I thought that Brandon Miller was a fantastic prospect. And I still like Brandon Miller a lot, but I'm taking Amen over him right now. The thing with Brandon is just, and this may sound funny to people because of Amen's shot, but there's just more questions still about Brandon Miller. There's less certain value. The floor is lower, and that's for basically the reasons that you laid out beautifully on Amen's side. But with Brandon Miller, his lack of rim pressure really concerns me. Like, this is a guy who is in year 2. He's a young player. This is when he should be getting to the rim for basically the highest percentage of his shots, or at least close to it, right? Maybe he adds a little strength, becomes better there, but he's spry. And 11% of his shots are coming at the rim. That's insanely low. He has a free throw rate of .155. That is really low, considering especially that in college, I thought that he showed a real knack for foul drawing, like not just on conventional drives to the basket, being able to craftily draw fouls. So that's concerning. I do think if he fully taps into his defensive tools, that's probably still a star to me because he's such a good shooter, and for his size, he's such a good ball handler, and his playmaking is really impressive. Like, he does so much complimentary stuff. That was always the thing. He was like the ultimate complimentary two-way guy who was just going to be really good at a lot. Never was somebody who had like a real number 1 ceiling to me, but it's just an awesome number 2. That is still in there, but we got to see him lock into the defensive stuff, and I'm worried about the rim pressure issues. So I think that Amen has the higher floor and the higher ceiling, and you laid it out, dude. Everybody with Amen is always concerned about the shot, and I get it. It's really, really hard to make it as a wing in today's NBA if you can't shoot the basketball reliably. But what I always feel like I have to hammer home to people is you've never seen an athlete like this. You have never seen a dude with this combination of first step, body control, vertical leap. You've never seen it. He's the best athlete in the league today. And he also fucking cares so much. He plays his ass off. And he is a smart basketball player who wants to do whatever it takes to win. You get that guy, and you think about all the areas in which he has the potential to be, as you said, Logan, one of the best, if not the best in the league. As an offensive rebounding wing, he's already the best in basketball. As a defensive player, as a perimeter defender, he's already one of the best in basketball. He could be the best in basketball. I mean, it's just absurd the length that he has, what he does as an on-ball shot blocker, what he can do flying in and making plays off the ball. He is an absolute psycho one-of-one athlete with a crazy motor. He's one of 6 wings this year, averaging more than a steal and more than a block a game. He could be the best cutting wing in basketball. He's already so good there. He could easily be the best transition player in basketball. When you are A+ in all those areas, that is how you have a major winning impact, even with huge shooting question marks. And that's why I've always been so confident Amen is going to be an awesome player. He's just different than any other wing in basketball. And now, Logan, now he is improving as a shooter. And I've always said the baseline for him is, can you get to a spot where you can hit 33% of your open threes, right? Where you can just be a kind of respectable, I've said before, Aaron Gordon level shooter. Aaron Gordon has kind of waxed and waned year to year, but he's generally low volume, low 30s from deep. Amen last year was a truly atrocious shooter of the basketball, and his touch was really rough. It has gotten a lot better this year. In the paint, outside the restricted area. Last year, Amen shot under 39%. This year, he's almost at 47%. And the percentage of his attempts that come there, it's gone way up. He's taking way more shots there. From mid-range last year, he took 27 mid-range jumpers all year, made under 30% of them. He's already taken 30 mid-range jumpers this year, and he's making 37% of them. Big improvement. Corner threes, he was 2 of 18, took 18 corner threes all of last year, made 11% of them. This year, 10 of 31 on corner threes. That's 32%. So he's shooting way better on all these shots, and he looks significantly more comfortable taking more of all these shots. Like, these are not good numbers. I want to be clear. None of these are good numbers. Well, 47% in the paint outside the restricted area is solid, but it's not good. But it's so much better than last year, and it's so much significant improvement for Amen because he doesn't have to be good at these things. He just has to be passable. He just has to be okay. And he's getting to that spot faster than I thought. And I'm the dude who's been declaring, yeah, this guy's going to be a star. I made a video about it before the year. What he is doing right now as a starter in 8 games 17, 11, and 3 with 3.5 stocks on over 64% true shooting. He is now improving as an on-ball player. Last year, he was a 32nd percentile pick and roll scorer. He was a 9th percentile isolation scorer, right? Even as an insane athlete, it's just really, really hard to be efficient as an on-ball creator on an island if people can play off of you and you have no sort of touch shot making. This year, 55th percentile pick and roll scorer, 39th percentile isolation scorer. He has a first step that is out of this world. His ball handling for a 6'7" dude is out of this world. I mean, he's got just this killer hesitation that if he gets you with it, he is by you in a second. His footwork in the paint is so good. His use of Euros, his ability to navigate those tight spaces, and his body control is incredible. And his touch is improving so much. He's over 48% on floaters this year, man. That's all it takes, right? You think about like a Ja Morant, another one of those freak athletes. Ja hasn't had to become a good pull-up three-point shooter to be an absolute problem out of pick and roll, to be an absolute problem with the ball in his hands. He's so incredibly tough to stop from getting to the rim, but then he has that counter of really good floater touch, okay? I mean, Amen just gets solid there. He doesn't have to be Ja on ball. He doesn't have to be close to that. If he's Ja on ball, oh my God, that could be a top 5 player because of his size, because of everything that he does defensively and around his on-ball game. He gets that floater in mid-range to a good place. This is just an absolute superstar. And that stuff is trending up faster than I expected. And I still think his passing can be tapped into more because he doesn't have the ball in his hands all that much in the scheme of things. It's just absolutely terrifying. Dude, I'm still not the absolute highest maybe on Amen on ball because of some of those shot-making limitations, but I'm getting higher on it every day. Higher on it every day. And if he's just really good at that stuff, and then you will see more of his passing where he's insanely creative and 6'7", right, has so many passing angles available to him. Jesus Christ, dude. I mean, you've just never seen a player like this.
And he's good playmaking when he gets into the air, too. He's good passing out of shots when he wants to. The one thing I wanted to add is you're talking about people being concerned with his shot and stuff. That is a problem if you're looking at him in the context of being a number one. But you mentioned his true shooting. It's like Amen doesn't force any of those looks up. He is looking to get to the basket most of the time because he knows that's where most of my value is coming from. You know, it's not like a Russell Westbrook where you have to, rewire the guy's brain and tell him, hey, man, a pull-up mid-range jumper is a bad look for you. A pull-up three is a bad look. He's not looking for those shots. He is maximizing. He understands his value, and he knows how to maximize
100%.
it. And that, to me, is half of the battle. And so he doesn't even have to worry about, like, hey, man, let's cut down on those looks. Hey, he doesn't. He understands the game. And if he does, like you said, man, because that's not what we're judging him by. He doesn't have to be a number one in the current situation that he is in Houston. And that's beautiful for him right now. But if he does tap into it and he unlocks that, like you said, dude, you're looking at one of the best players on the planet. In my opinion, already with what he's doing, he's already super valuable. Yes. I want the guy on my team. I want him because he's going to swing and win me basketball games.
Totally.
The one thing I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
We're looking forward. Let's look ahead to, let's say, the playoffs, right? Do you think his shot limitations matter there more? Does that become any part of a problem?
I think that they matter a little bit more. I've seen a lot of people say, well, what makes him different from a Ben Simmons, right? Because of the non-shooting.
Wow!
Yeah. So I think that there's a few distinctions. First of all, he's already a better shooter than Ben Simmons.
Amen Thompson's not a 6'10" pussy.
A little disrespectful to Ben Simmons at his best, who was a very good basketball player. But when it comes to how problematic the non-shooting aspect is, again, Amen is already a significantly better shooter than Ben Simmons. He's a guy who you'll let shoot, absolutely, but better than Ben Simmons by far, and is trending upwards. He's also a way better off-ball player in the half court because he is so much more explosive athletically. He is so much more dangerous as a cutter, right? Ben Simmons, it was like sort of, we'll put him in the dunker spot. No, Amen is like an actual sneak behind you, leap up for a lob, punch on a dude, kind of impactful cutter. It's totally different to me. And then on ball, in the half court, he's more of a problem because you can play off of him. His first step is still so much faster than Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons was a really good athlete in the full court. He had those long-ass strides. in the half court, he wasn't just going to dust people off the bounce like Amen is capable of. So to me, those are all the differences. Do I think he could have a rough offensive postseason as he currently is as a basketball player? Yeah, I think that is definitely
he's so
possible.
capable still of supplementing all of that value in all the other areas of the game.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, dude. He understands his role to a T. He does not force himself on the game. He maximizes the impact that he can have without having to have the ball in his hands too much. He finds a way to be an incredibly efficient, incredibly impactful two-way player, and he's already doing that. And that's a thing compared to like Brandon Miller, right? Like Brandon Miller, you can see the upside as a shot maker and as a shot creator, but right now Brandon Miller is not an impactful winning basketball player because the efficiency is so rough. The two-way stuff is not there. Amen is a dude who you want on your team in any role, and you will want on your team in any role forever. And then he can just continue to climb from there. I don't expect him to ever be a number one. Like, I do think it's tough when you still have the shooting issues that he does to be an offensive number one. But I can't write off the possibility. And so if he doesn't become a significantly better, right, mid-range shooter, the floater touch gets really good, even the pull-up three gets there, I'm not expecting him to ever be like a real pull-up three-point shooter. That would just blow my mind. Oh my God, I could cry at the thought of that basketball player. If that stuff doesn't come around, but he just is able to hit 33, 34% of his open corner threes, that to me is a star because of how much he excels in every other area of the game. And that can be a functional floor spacer and a part of an offense. I mean, there are certain situations where, like, I think he would thrive even more, right? If he were along a floor spacing five and a 5-out offense, then I think he could do more with the ball in his hands because it would just be so hard to help on him because you're helping off of a shooter at all times. And I think he would just destroy people like that. But no matter what, I think you're getting a dude who is going to make a star-level impact on this game and is going to be an all-star in this league. You just can't apply conventional standards to a dude who is completely out of the box as an athlete and as a basketball player. Logan, let's talk about a couple more guys who I really like, all right? It's just the theme of the show. There are two teams in the East who have been heating up as of late, who have won 5 of their last 6 games and are establishing themselves in the playoff picture, and those are the Indiana Pacers, who are now up in that 7 seed, and the Detroit Pistons, who are now in that 8 seed. Who do you view as more of a legit playoff team between those two, Logan?
I'm going to take the Indiana Pacers, and Indiana, obviously their big fatal flaw is that they are incapable of playing defense. To me, the Pistons' defense, the advantage they have there does not outweigh the advantage that Indiana has with their offense. And when I'm looking at the playoffs, I just prefer the team that does something at a really elite level. And I look at Indiana as that team with the high-caliber offense. And I just trust their offensive duo so much more with Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam. I know Halliburton was the story of the NBA for the first couple of months with his struggles at home and away, but I think we've seen that balance itself back out a little more. Siakam's been rock solid. The Pacers have been injured too. And I don't say this to discredit anything that Detroit has been doing. Detroit's been playing really good basketball. They're 8-2. Over their last 10 games. They're top 10 in offensive, defensive, and net rating over the last 10. And I think that some of the changes that we've seen them make from last year to this year have been really positive. Introducing Tobias Harris and like Malik Beasley and just competent shooters of the basketball and giving Cade space to work with have been really, really important. But when I look at them, I just don't trust their offense as much as nearly as I do Indiana with how the ball moves around and the skill and the talent that that team has top to bottom. And I just don't think like Detroit has this sort of elite defense. I don't look at them as like a really good defensive team. If I did, I may be moved and I may say Detroit, but I know what I'm getting with Indiana. It's a sure thing. It's a sure high-powered offense. They've got a ton of talent up and down the roster. And again, at the crux of this argument, I just trust their offensive duo so much more, where I could see Cade being inefficient in the playoffs. Detroit's way better than last year. Not even close. I mean, they were in the cellar last year. They have moved up out of the cellar. Now they're in the basement.
No, they're not in the basement.
They're not in the basement. They're on the ground floor. They're on the ground. Yeah. They're in the lobby. They're trying to make their way up. I still prefer Indiana though.
Yeah, this is pretty easily Indiana. I'm not trying to set up Detroit with this question because, I mean, like you said, dude, they're
They've been
so
playing
much
good
better.
ball. They've been playing good
They've been
ball.
playing good ball. Cade is having an awesome season, but, like, it's easily the Pacers for me. The Pacers, for the last 15 games, have just gotten back to last year's team. They're 11-4 in that stretch. They've got a top 3 offense. Hallie is averaging a rounded 20-10 on over 63% true shooting in that span. And I'm glad, Logan. I'm glad that we defended Hallie. I'm glad that we said that he just wasn't right physically or mentally. He was in a slump. I mean, we had to go to war in the trenches on Pick a Side. Riv and Drew, certified
Oh my
Hallie haters.
gosh, man, they couldn't wait.
Oh, they were just
Chomping
pouncing.
at the bit.
Yeah, eager to hate. Woke up wanting to hate. And Hallie was really struggling. But, as I said at the time, if that were to hold up, it would be the most shocking regression I've ever seen from a player just in the midst of their prime as young as Hallie is. I didn't think it was going to hold up, though. I thought that there were extenuating circumstances, and I think that we've seen that's the case. I mean, Hallie is back. He's doing his thing. He's leading an elite offense. He's the impeccable decision maker and playmaker and shooter that he is at his best while taking incredible care of the basketball. They're running and gunning. They're doing their thing. His shots come back in a big way. I think that's such a big part of it. And he just looks comfortable and confident again. So this is an elite offense when Hallie is playing like he's capable of. Siakam is such a good compliment to him. Benedict Mathurin has been hooping, by the way. He's just another weapon in their arsenal now. And at some point, they'll get Aaron Nesmith back. They'll have their best point of attack defender. And we'll basically just be back to last year's Pacers, where they've got this elite offense. They can run and gun with anyone, but they're a bad defense. They're bad defense. Without Aaron Nesmith, they're a slightly more respectable one with him just because he's somebody that they can throw at good wings. But that's the thing. Big picture for Indiana, I wouldn't be feeling great off of a conference finals appearance, but at least you don't have to worry that, like, the bedrock of your franchise has fallen off a cliff, because that has not happened. Hallie is an awesome basketball player, and he's doing his thing. We'll never again get December 2023 Hallie, but we're getting really good star-level impact Hallie again, and that's been good to see. The Pistons, especially without Jaden Ivey, are basically just Cade on offense, and then they've got some solid shooters around him with THJ and Malik Beasley. And Tobias Harris is having a good season, Logan. I know that you may be begrudged to admit it, but he's having a good season.
No, dude, I mean, he's a good player for them.
Okay, thank you. This is what I told you. This is what I said. I said if there's anybody in the NBA who should sign Tobias Harris, it is the Detroit Pistons, so they can have an actual grown-up, professional, good basketball player.
I mean,
And
you're
you were
going
pissed
from
at the time.
you're going from a team that was 17th or 27th, excuse me, in offensive rating last year to 17th now. It may not seem like that big of an improvement, but
It's huge.
it really is. It's made all the difference in the world.
It's huge. And Cade, to me, has got to be an all-star. By the way, shout out to another guy who I think has to be an all-star guard, Darius Garland. We were raving about Mobley, but Garland had 40 last night versus
Do you think
Toronto.
Cleveland has 4 all-stars?
I don't think Allen's an all-star, no. But I think the other 3 are damn near locks. At least they're damn near locks on my ballot. We went through this last week. I think Garland and Cade should both make it. Cade is 24-7 and over 9 assists on negative 2% relative true shooting. Still has to get that up, but has improved in so many ways. His pull-up three-point volume has more than doubled. That is so big for him having a more efficient shot diet, right? It's just a really important weapon for him to have in his bag. He's shooting 48% on floaters. That's really good. That's improvement. He's a really good mid-range shooter, which isn't the most efficient, but a really nice thing for him to have given his size and the pace that he plays with. So Cade is balling out. He's balling out. He's a star. As a scorer, the area in which he's going to have to improve, it's always been the same, right? He has to get more easy stuff for himself. And now he is doing some of that with his increased three-point volume, because those are easier, more efficient shots on average than what he was doing from the mid-range at a higher volume previously. But it's really going to be about the easy stuff at the rim. Cade is still just at 4.5 free throw attempts per game, which is pretty low for his offensive volume. And he shoots 53% in the restricted area. That is a really, really rough number. With his size and with his pace and with his strength, he's strong, bro. He is strong. He can carve his way into the vicinity of the rim, but it's generally going to be a contested finish because, again, he doesn't separate with quickness. He just kind of carves his way in there with strength more. And then he just doesn't have that, like, athletic pop to just fly past people and get himself easy finishes. So that's a really rough number. Turnovers are still high. I really like Cade. I've been a defender of his. I made a whole video last year defending him, saying he's not the problem in Detroit. But I also said in that video he does have his limitations, and those limitations to me with the finishing remain the same. I just think it's going to be hard for him to generate the shot quality needed for Detroit to threaten anybody in a playoff series. When, as you say, they're also just okay defensively. They compete more there, but they're just solid, and they're relying on Cade to do everything offensively. And I like Cade a lot. He's not that sort of offensive engine. But the fact that they're a playoff team at all, that they're in that position right now is huge progress, although I do like Atlanta more than them. So
I like
maybe they don't
Atlanta.
end up a playoff team.
I think I like Atlanta more than both of these teams.
It's
I like
really
Atlanta.
close. I like Atlanta.
I like Atlanta a lot.
So do
man.
I. It's just like when Indiana's offense is clicking like this, it's hard to stop. But I do like Atlanta a lot. I mean, I love Jalen Johnson. I love
And Dyson
Jalen Johnson.
Daniels, man. Big O, Onyeka. Dre is balling this year. I could talk for a minute about the Hawks.
Dre is balling, dude. He
I'm so
has
happy.
impressed me.
I thought
He has
Dre
impressed
was...
me.
I was scared that Dre might
Wasn't
be on
looking
bust
good.
watch.
It wasn't looking good, but he's had a really nice year. The whole team has had a nice year. And Trey, even though the shooting efficiency is bad, I mean, golly, he is just such a great playmaker. And the overall efficiency, true shooting, is better than like the raw field goal percentage looks. Pistons are definitely at least going to be in the play-in. And I said that very early on in the year. Good vibe with this team, man. Good vibe. Actually, I think they're going to be in the play-in.
Real quick,
The Sixers are going to get into this all, though, and they're going to bump everybody down a slot.
do you think long term, you think Cade's good enough to be a number 2?
I think Cade, yeah, like your second best player.
I just think they need another scorer.
I totally agree with
I think
that.
they need
I
a
think-
number 1 scorer.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think the best pair for Cade, any sort of elite scorer, if it's an
I was gonna
elite
say
play
like a-
finishing big,
The
if it's
first
an
guy I
elite
thought about was
scoring
like
wing,
a Zach LaVine or something.
yeah, I think
I
you
just
can
think
dream
about-
a little bit bigger
Well,
than
I was
that.
just thinking about available guys. But
Yeah, I was going to say, like, yeah, KD. I think KD would be amazing with Cade. I think that he can carry that load as a primary decision maker and as a playmaker. But yes, I think you need a better scorer than him to be the number 1 scorer for your offense to be really good. Cade is also a good defensive player, which is another thing that I banked on with him. You know, it's tough to be a good defender when nobody on your team takes defense seriously because you win 14 games. Now that you do take defense seriously, you're seeing what Cade is capable of there, man. It's been a really fun season from him, and it's been a really encouraging season from Detroit. Logan, they're saying you might be able to have shit in Detroit. The Lions, 15 wins. The Pistons, 19 wins, which is more than they had in all of last season. Detroit may be coming back.
Jared Goff saved Detroit. Jared Goff single-handedly saved Detroit with Dan Campbell, man.
I love me a little Jared Goff. Marin's finest. Shout out. All right, guys. Appreciate you. We're going to be back on Sunday talking about some good old-fashioned American football, NFL playoffs. I cannot wait. We previewed all these games. If you missed it, you can find that full show on our YouTube channel or across audio platforms, wherever you listen to the pod or watch the pod. But also on our YouTube channel, we have all of our in-depth video breakdowns, all of our video essays. By the way, I'm doing one on Amen Thompson next, okay? I've decided. Yeah, I haven't started on it yet, but that's coming next. I love him. I don't care that I made a video about him 3 months ago. Also, you know what I love about both him and Asar? Their middle name is Excellence,
Yeah,
but it's XLNC.
I think we've talked about that before, but that's a wicked middle name.
It is wicked. I mean, it's pretty weird, I'm not going to lie. I kind of wish that it was
It's
just
pretty cool.
Excellence written out. I don't love the XLNC part, but it's
I
definitely
think
interesting.
it's kind of cool, man.
Yeah. All right. All right. I can't wait to meet Logan XLNC Camden.
I'm not doing that to my kid.
Coward. Bro doesn't want him to be destined from greatness. Worked out pretty well for Amen and Asar.
Maybe I'll just name.
By the way, also the Bay Area's finest. Look at the
Maybe
Bay,
I'll just
man.
name my kid Amen Thompson Camden. We'll figure it out.
That I could definitely get behind. So if you want more insights about Amen and his beautiful game, those will be coming soon. You can also follow us across social media, TikTok for as long as that's around, at NerdSesh, Twitter and Instagram, at nerd_sesh on Twitter, at NerdSesh on Instagram as well. You can see all of the clips from the show, graphics from the show, and all of our short form trivia content there, and some original short form takes that we do for social. You can also check out our Discord if you want. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios. And you can check out our merch. The link to that is also in our link tree, and that is at breakingtea.com. So, with that, as always, appreciate you guys. God, I cannot wait for football. I've been Carson Breber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.